Poland should have a lot of priority because of what they do and how they do it. You know, in Britain, we are looking at Poland to copy what they do.
Really?
Of course.
So we set the example?
Of course, 100%. I'm not going to lie, there's respect issues, you know, and sometimes, but for me, yes, they do have a lot of influence because they're big players in the game.
Tam, gdzie żużlowe rozgrywki przenoszą się poza tor. Gabinet Prezesa. Odcinek 8.
Right, Phil, thanks for finding time. I know you're pretty busy. Obviously, we're still ahead of tonight's SGP in Warsaw. But I'd like to talk to you for the Polish viewer to get to know you, because it's no secret that you're pretty much often in the broadcast. People can see you.
Not my choice.
What is your role? How would you describe it? Because it seems like you're the conductor of the whole SGP orchestra.
Yes, probably a good description. For me, it's just you know, running the show for the TV, for the sporting element, and also making sure the riders are happy. And yeah, there's obviously I would like to think there's a reasonable respect for both sides. You know, obviously I respect the riders a lot, and I hope they have the same. So it's, yeah, conducting the show is a good analogy, and yeah, I'm trying my best to put on a sporting show. That's the main thing, to make sure the sporting element is correct and it's doing what it should be doing.
What about your schedule? Because there's obviously 11 rounds and you need to come a few days before the SGP. What are your duties? What do you do? Do you ever have time to visit the place like it's Prague or Warsaw?
Not really time to visit, you know. I'm at the track and then you're going back having dinner and going to bed. Even the first day I'm here, I'm on my own. I'm sort of doing a stadium inspection, making sure everything's correct, everything's in the right position and does what it needs to do. So yeah, I don't really get to see the cities as much as I would like probably, but yeah, that's not the end of the world. I'm here for the sport.
So you wake up in the morning, probably eat some breakfast at the hotel, come to the stadium and spend what, like 12, 14 hours at the venue? 12,
14 hours a day for sort of 3 days, yeah, that's the normality of it, yeah.
Right, so obviously you're in charge of tracks as well. So my personal opinion is that it has changed a lot, because obviously you work for BSI as well. But I feel like racing now is much better. For example, in Warsaw, like with Mikkel Mikkelsen last year, just overtaking everyone on the outside. And you play a huge role in that. Is that true? Do you prepare the tracks as well?
So on the temporary track, yeah, until the racing starts, it's nothing to do with me. Obviously, Ollie Olsen and his team are brought in to build the track. So that's their job, just as the adverts going in the background. But yeah, it's their job to build the track. And but when racing starts, I sort of have control of it. And I know last year, for example, the plan was to make it nice and hard, but also we scraped the outside maybe like half an hour before the start. And yeah, it proved that worked, obviously, as you've seen in Heat 1 last year. It doesn't always work, and people never realise that it's such a difficult decision. And I did a thing with Warner Brothers Discovery trying to give an explanation. And I've thought about it, and the easiest way to say something, if a track is a 60-second track, if you ride around the inside, maybe it's 1.2 kilometres, and that's 60 seconds. If you go around the outside, it's 1.5 kilometres, that also has to be 60 seconds to make it a good racetrack. If the outside is 59, everybody goes on the outside. If the inside is 59, so it's no magic formula, and you've got to make the outside where you go a lot further, a lot faster, and then hopefully you get that funnel effect where two riders come together.
That's what we want to see, obviously.
But yeah, obviously we try our best to make, for me, I want to put on a good show, especially we've got good machinery in these temporary tracks, and normally after Heat 8, if I find that the racing is not as good as, we'll go out there and we'll do something with the track to try and help.
But it's not just temporary tracks. I remember Prague, which for me has always been the most boring round.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say that. But the last 2 years proved that you can race in Prague and make it exciting. So what is exactly that you do? Do you try to notice things on track that people from those venues don't usually notice, or do you try to put pressure to make it more fun?
I obviously work with the guy that's on the track, because they know their track. Obviously, I never, normally for the practice and qualifying, whichever it is, I sort of let them do their thing a little bit, and then we talk after, see how it's gone and how we feel. You know, it's a common, you know, I don't go in there and completely rip the book up and say change everything, you know, I'll just give them little ideas on, and I'm not saying I'm a super expert, you know, I've been doing it a long time, and I know people will always comment that I water more than a league match, which I do. There's no problem, you know, but I don't stop after heat 1, heat 2, heat 3 to water the track, you know. If I did that, we've already got heat 4, 8, 12, 16, 20.
But you used to do that. I remember you putting like a lot of water on the...
It's been like from day one, and I think other speedways changed, so it's now more accentuated maybe. But yeah, you know, in the rule book of the FIM, we're not allowed to have dust.
I see.
There's an actual rule that says that, yeah.
You're not allowed
we've got to stop the dust for the fans, you know. The idea is that we're putting a show on for the fans as well. So, and you know, hey, I'll be really honest. Sometimes when you have a tiny bit of water on an inside, it makes the wheel spin a bit more. So it encourages guys to move outside as well. So there's lots of things to it. But yeah, you know, I do what... I've not really changed my philosophy in 9 years of doing this job. So
I see.
I've been consistent, I would say. And I would like to think statistically, Raphael, who does a lot of the statistics,
Guru Stats,
you know,
yes,
he helps me, and at the end of the year I always get a report and I think, okay, I don't want to compare, but we do okay in the Grand Prix. Obviously there's different elements. People can say they're the best in the world, so you'll get better racing, but also, as you know, in league racing, if a junior gets in front, then you're likely to get more races. A Grand Prix rider will pass them. So I think it swings and roundabouts. But yeah, I think we always have rounds that are not so good. That's natural, which are disappointing for everyone. Yeah, I think from a perspective of racing, I think an individual event like this, the crowd needs racing. Definitely. When you have a league match, it's sometimes about if your team win, it doesn't matter. I don't know, I remember one of the extra league semi-finals last year where there was one pass, but because it was a very close race, maybe Torren Lublin, if I remember rightly, it was an amazing atmosphere. If we only have a handful of passes here tomorrow, it's a disaster for me and disaster for everyone. So, yeah, I've got to try and make the track the best you can so it's available for the riders to use different lines.
So you spoke about going to different places, different cities, obviously different cultures as well.
Yeah.
What was the biggest challenge for you to find a common ground and talk to people at the venue, and why was it Togliatti 2021 in Russia?
Yeah, obviously there's language barriers, you know, I don't speak Russian. I did actually do a little bit of, I did take some Polish lessons thinking that's one, I was going to keep it quiet, but I never kept up with it, so I never really got too far with that. But yeah, I think in Russia there was obviously language issues, and when they're not, for me there's some basic elements, you know. When you start a water kart, you should start it in the middle of a straight. Because if you start in the middle of a bend, it's very easy to double cross and things. So there's certain basics that I would think every track guy in the world should know, and believe it or not, I'm shocked that they don't.
But did they not know, or did they just want to make it their way? No, they just made mistakes, and I was trying to instruct them and tell people to translate, and it just got mistakes. And I remember, I'm sure there was a video out there of me, like steam coming out of my ears. Yeah, so it's just, and I think that, if I remember right, there was a lot of dirt on the tractors, and they were letting it go coming out of the bend. Now, if they'd have gone across to the middle of the straight, it wouldn't affect the event. So I was trying to tell them to don't drop the material till you get out of the racing line. So yeah, but hey, it's never easy, and I respect every track guy for what they do, but also, yeah, it's my job to, if it goes good, it's the track that's great. If it goes bad, it's my fault. I see how it works.
This is always the case. And
well, you're a manager before, so you know it's exactly the same way.
Yeah, as a rider, if you're not going good, it's because of the bike. If you're going good, everything's good and it's perfect. So.
I agree. Let's talk about the calendar, because obviously there were some changes to the calendar for 2024. I know money plays a huge role. We're not going to talk about it.
A właśnie, że będziemy o tym rozmawiać. Słuchajcie, zdecydowałem się przerwać ten wywiad, ponieważ do tego, co mówi Phil za chwilę, trzeba dodać trochę kontekstu. Kilka informacji, żeby lepiej zrozumieć to, co on chce w tym wywiadzie przekazać. Pierwsza kwestia. Na wywiad dostałem 25 do 30 minut. Jak to wpłynęło na Phila, że był między spotkaniami, że wieczorem zawody w Warszawie? Tego nie wiem. Wiem po sobie, że na przykład w tym pytaniu normalnie, gdyby był czas, byłyby możliwości zawarcia okoliczności tego, co się dzieje. Szczególnie, że można popaść w pewną pułapkę. I to jest druga rzecz, dlaczego przerywam. Nie tylko czas, jaki mieliśmy na wywiad, ale ta druga kwestia. Bardzo łatwo nam, jako kibicom, spojrzeć na Grand Prix jako całość. Natomiast są dwa podmioty, które organizują cykl Grand Prix. Jest to Światowa Federacja Motocyklowa, dla której pracuje Phil Morris, czyli po prostu FIM, i jest promotor, czyli taki dokładny organizator rund. Wyznacza kalendarz, wyznacza to, jakie są stawki za to, żeby kupić licencję, i to są podmioty, które bardzo często współpracują, ale nie do końca mają takie same interesy. Otóż FIM, czyli Phil Morris w tym wypadku, a także wszyscy nad nim, Armando Castagna, no i przede wszystkim prezydent FIM-u George Vegas, w pewnym sensie jako federacja międzynarodowa zrzeszająca federacje krajowe ma prawo nadawania tytułu mistrza świata i chce, żeby to był tytuł prestiżowy. Więc dba o prestiż dyscypliny, przynajmniej takim powinien mieć interes w tym wszystkim. Jest promotor, dla którego liczy się przede wszystkim kasa. Tym promotorem od całkiem niedawna, ale już od kilku lat, jest na początku Eurosport Events, Warner Bros. Discovery. Te podmioty zmieniały swoje nazwy. Nie o to chodzi. Chodzi o to, że promotor chce przede wszystkim operować pieniędzmi. To znaczy FIM jest federacją i zajmuje się prestiżem, ale tym, gdzie trafią rundy, jak zostaną pokazane w telewizji, do jakich krajów zostaną sprzedane, co z tym idzie, ile na tym promotor zarobi, to zależy przez 10 lat od Warner Bros. Discovery Sports, tak się nazywa ta spółka. I teraz tak, film musi dbać o prestiż, no bo kontrakt jest do 2031 roku. I komuś trzeba będzie, następnemu promotorowi, sprzedać to także za całkiem niezłą kasę. Przez poprzednie 2 dekady organizowała to firma BSI, która była gotowa przedłużyć swoją umowę na 3. dekadę. Weszło Warner Bros. Discovery z wielkimi obietnicami. No bo mają kontakty, bo mają znajomości, bo mają pod sobą Eurosport, bo są firmą francusko-amerykańską, która mocno wchodzi w motosporty, między innymi w WEC, w którym startuje Robert Kubica, bo organizuje osobiście wręcz François Ribeiro, który ogłaszał bardzo zresztą doniośle, że wzniesie światowy żużel na wyższy poziom. François Ribeiro między innymi swoje kontakty w FIM-ie jako szef Discovery Sports Events łapał jeszcze na długodystansowych wyścigach motocyklowych. I François Ribeiro, który odszedł po 2 latach, w sumie nie wiadomo w jakich okolicznościach, nie został de facto zastąpiony przez jakąś jedną konkretną osobę jako szefa promotora, czyli Discovery. Tam jest teraz sztab osób, który podejmuje decyzje. Natomiast ważne jest to, że dla takiego kogoś jak François Ribeiro, który reprezentuje Discovery, liczy się kasa, czyli teoretycznie oni mogliby nawet zrobić 10 rund w Polsce, zapełnić 10 stadionów, zgarnąć z tego dużo pieniędzy, natomiast FIM na takie coś nie będzie pozwalał. To FIM ma zasadę, że nie więcej niż 4 rundy w Polsce, nie więcej niż 40%, dlatego musi się odbywać 11 runda, żeby Polacy mieli 4. Polacy zapełniliby stadiony, Polacy płacą najwięcej, ponad 2,5 miliona złotych za prawo do organizacji rundy w Toruniu, w Gorzowie, we Wrocławiu. I to jest stawka najwyższa. Dla porównania za granicą niektóre miasta, stadiony płacą 100 000 euro. Dlaczego? Dlatego, że w Polsce mamy największe stadiony, bilety tanie nie są, bo jest wielu fanów żużla i te stadiony i tak się zapełniają, więc promotor w sumie, gdyby film na to pozwolił, to mógłby robić to tylko na dochodowych stadionach, to znaczy na takich, które płacą 2 miliony i w górę za organizację rundy, bo to jest ich interes, bo ta kasa trafia do nich. To, gdzie to się odbywa, to jakie to ma znaczenie dla prestiżu cyklu, jest drugorzędne z perspektywy Excela, z perspektywy tego, ile promotor może na tym zrobić. Film oczywiście będzie mówił, no nie możecie robić tylko w Polsce, czy tylko na tych stadionach, które są pełne, bo my chcemy cyklu, który jest w Australii, który jest być może w Argentynie, może w Stanach, na pewno w wielu krajach Europy. No i co za tym idzie? Tutaj mamy pewien sprzeczny interes, no bo film pewnie nawet wolałby stadiony bardziej autentyczne, promotor, czyli Discovery, wolałoby stadiony bardziej dochodowe. I co za tym idzie? Tutaj był pewien konflikt interesów.
Let's talk about the calendar, because obviously there were some changes to the calendar for 2024. I know money plays a huge role. We're not going to talk about it. That's a completely different topic. But according to Phil Morris, what would be the perfect SGP calendar for any given season? Let's say that there's all money in the world, that every round produces the same amount of money. Where would you go? What would be the key factors in making that decision?
Good question. Obviously, I would like to be going outside Europe. first start, 100% sure. And
whose call is that? Is it that, for example...
Well, I work for the FIM.
Yeah.
I don't work for Warner Brothers or BSI.
So is it the, let's say, Australian promoter who needs to make a decision, find the money, call you guys, or does it work the other way?
A bit of both, really.
Okay.
You know, I know Warner Brothers are trying hard. They're doing everything they can to get that happening. Obviously, the FIM, I would say, required it or would request that they do that, go outside Europe. So our job is to ask them to please respect that and do that. So we are pushing and helping the best we can, whether it's New Zealand, Australia, America, Argentina. You know, there are things being talked about all the time. Obviously, as you know, at the moment it hasn't happened. But yeah, hopefully, and as for me, I'm very honest, and I'll say it, that Polish Speedway is the best in the world. I've got no doubt in saying that. You know, you have the best crowds, you have the most professional setup, everything is good. So for me, coming to Poland is always good because you have good people, you have good staff, you have good technical people. So I like Poland, but also I can understand the fact that when you have 4 Grand Prix in Poland in 11-round series, it's a lot.
It's a lot.
So also I can see both sides of it. Commercially, I can understand because the stadiums are full. As you see, this will be an amazing stadium, and Torun, Gorzów, Wrocław, they're amazing. Plus there's others waiting in the background. So yeah, I get that, but also for me it's good to be going to different places. So for me, I would like maybe to be going to France, to go into places like that, and even Spain and Italy, because they're such motorbike countries. It would be good to try and build a legacy there. But hey, I don't make them decisions. But if I had it would be great to be in Spain, Italy, France, these kind of countries which maybe not been on the calendar much before.
Interesting. What about the UK? Because you're a Welshman yourself. Obviously,
yeah, I am, yes.
I'm sure that Cardiff is a pretty
It's
important
my backyard,
round.
yeah.
It is your backyard.
Jeszcze ostatnia rzecz a propos kontekstu co do tego, co za chwilę powie Phil. François Ribeiro w wywiadzie dla Sportowych Faktów, jeszcze kiedy był na stanowisku, tłumaczył na przykład, że wyjazd do Argentyny nie jest możliwy, bo promotor musiałby wyłożyć ze swoich pieniędzy na start 1,5 miliona euro za sam wyjazd, transport zawodników, transport sprzętu na antypody i że oczywiście chciałby te pieniądze od promotora odzyskać, no tylko promotor musiałby jeszcze zapłacić za organizację praw, za organizację rundy, za organizację samego eventu, czyli ochrona, sprzątanie stadionu, wynajęcie być może stadionu, żeby to się w ogóle opłacało w Australii i dlatego na przykład tej rundy w Australii nie mamy, czego chciałby FIM, ale nie może tego wyegzekwować, bo to Discovery zarządza tym, która runda się opłaca. François Ribeiro w tym samym wywiadzie powiedział jeszcze jedną ważną rzecz, do której za chwilę odniesie się Phil Morris. Mianowicie Ribeiro na pytanie o to, czy jest możliwa druga runda Grand Prix na Wyspach Brytyjskich w kolebce europejskiego Speedwaya, odpowiedział, że nie, ponieważ mają wewnętrzne badania, w których wychodzi ich, że Cardiff im się w miarę opłaca. To też była ciekawa sytuacja, już nie będę się w to zagłębiał, ale Cardiff było organizowane nie przez miasto, tylko właśnie sam promotor, bazując na historii ponad 20-letniej Cardiff, chciał korzystać z wielkiego stadionu, na którym może zrobić. I według wewnętrznych badań, w tym wywiadzie mówił Ribeiro, nie da się zrobić drugiej rundy na Wyspach Brytyjskich, bo 95% osób kupujących bilety na Cardiff to są Szkoci, Londyńczycy, czyli osoby z okolic Londynu i przede wszystkim kibice z Manchesteru, którzy w sumie blisko do tej wali nie mają, ale jadą tłumnie. Więc na przykład Manchester został wykluczony, ale nie dlatego, że Manchester by się nie opłacił. Tam te 6000 miejsc by się zapełniło, tylko było ryzyko ze strony Discovery, że już na swoje barki biorą finansową organizację wielkiego przedsięwzięcia na stadionie Millennium czy też Principality w Cardiff, więc mogliby zrobić mniej, bo część kibiców zostałaby w Manchesterze. Myślę, że wszyscy wolelibyśmy 2 rundy na Wyspach Brytyjskich, no ale zdaniem ówczesnego dyrektora Discovery Sports czy Eurosports Events nie dało się tego zrobić, bo byłoby ryzyko, że ten tłum, ta publiczność się rozejdzie. Co o tym myślicie? To już zostawiam Wam. Zobaczcie, co myśli Phil Morris.
What about the UK? Because you're a Welshman yourself. Obviously,
I am, yes.
I'm sure that Cardiff is a pretty
It's
important
my
round.
backyard, yeah.
It is your backyard, but it's not full, and it had a charm back in the day, Millennium Stadium or Principality as it is called now. I read an interview with François Ribeiro. I know he's no longer in charge, but he said that there will be no second round in England due to the fact that Cardiff consumes so much of the market that people from Manchester wouldn't go to Cardiff and would prefer, for example, Manchester if it was there. But I don't understand that logic. Why do you really think that there would be no 2 rounds, no crowd for 2 rounds in the UK?
On that one, I respectfully say no comment.
Okay, I'll see.
For various reasons. Again, it's not for me to say that. Why they don't have another round. Obviously, the Speedway Nations is in Manchester this year, so they have 2 big events there. And going forward, that's not for me to talk about. But, yeah.
Is there a stadium in the UK that you would wish that the GP arrived there one day?
I think everyone would know that Manchester Bellevue is a very good racetrack. But it's probably a 6,000 capacity. I'm not sure the exact capacity, but that would bring it to probably the lowest in the Grand Prix.
Okay.
Because even Croatia was 7.5, which was full, and it's great. So I think it's finding that balance to, dropping one off to maybe put that on. But again, I would assume that would be the stadium in the UK that would be in that country, if you're British, it's the best one we've got.
I jeszcze jeden przerywnik, jeszcze jedna didaskalia, bo oczywiście Phil Morris jest dyrektorem cyklu Grand Prix, natomiast ma też jeszcze jedną ważną funkcję od zeszłego roku, to jest CEO brytyjskiej Premiership, najwyższej klasy rozgrywkowej w Anglii. Phil Morris, jako osoba znana z mediów, z cyklu Grand Prix, bo przecież pracował tam także za poprzedniego promotora, czyli BSI, miał odświeżyć tę ligę, miał dodać jej tego blasku, który ta liga miała 20 lat temu, kiedy zresztą Morris sam tam występował jako zawodnik. Przychodził w okolicznościach bardzo niełatwych. Owszem, po pierwsze, Brytyjczycy odżyli, jeżeli chodzi o wspieranie Speedwaya, chodzenie na stadiony po Mistrzostwie Świata w Sonie, kiedy to Były, Lambert i także Wolfinden przywieźli złoto niestety kosztem Polaków. Natomiast te nazwiska nawet nie tylko nie chciały występować w Wielkiej Brytanii, ale także Wolfinden czy Lambert mieszkali w Polsce. Coraz więcej zawodników miało problem z tym, żeby z Polski na wyspy dojeżdżać, bo łatwiej się przebić promem do Szwecji, trudniej przebić się na wyspy, bo to już lot, bo to już dłuższa jazda samochodem ze sprzętem. Zarobki w tamtym momencie, na krótko przed tym jak Morris przejął Premiership, wynosiły jakieś 3-4 razy mniej niż w Polsce. To także nie była motywacja dla najlepszych zawodników, żeby po tym piątku, niedzieli w Polsce jechać do Anglii, więcej mogli zarobić i nadal mogą zarobić w Szwecji, więc Liga Brytyjska traciła po prostu bardzo dużo topowych nazwisk. Phil Morris miał zrobić coś, żeby temu zapobiec. I teraz tak, Phil Morris jako ten CEO Premiership jest de facto odpowiednikiem Wojciecha Stępniewskiego, prezesa PGE Ekstraligi. To nie jest federacja, to jest zarządzanie po prostu ligą, rozgrywkami. I to jest ta część wywiadu, w której nadal pozostajemy trochę przy Grand Prix, ale częściej poruszamy się niż wcześniej w tych brytyjskich kątach, w tym co Phil Morris ma do powiedzenia jako szef rozgrywek w Anglii i na Wyspach.
I really want to ask you a question in regards to outside perspective for Polish fans. So, I know what is said on British forums or Speedway friends on Facebook that Poles have too much to say in Speedway, World Speedway or Team Speedway or League Speedway. What is your perspective on Polish Speedway? Do we really have too much to say?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Of course, you have the best TV contracts, you have the best organisation. Of course, if I was Wojciech, I would be saying, hey, we're in charge here a little bit. Of course, I'm not going to lie, there's respect issues, and sometimes, but for me, yes, they do have a lot of influence because they're big players in the game.
Okay.
This is the same in any sport. They get the crowds, they get the revenue, they get the contracts, and the riders get paid more money in there. There's no...
I feel like you're referring to the issue that may appear in the nearest future, which is the Thursday racing, because obviously it's a spot for Great Britain. But then, according to what we hear from the media here in Poland, second Ekstraliga, which is second tier division, will race on Thursday starting in 2025. Yeah. What's going to happen? Are you going to block Polish riders?
We need to have discussions, you know. It needs to work both ways, I think, if I have a reasonable relationship with Wojciech, so we can talk about things. So, we just need to sit down and talk. But I think it needs to work both ways as well. Mm-hmm. I'm not gonna. I shouldn't get into this, but it's very difficult when you see the Polish qualification rounds on an English race day, the golden helmet on an English race day, the challenge for the final on an English race day. all the rearranged Polish fixtures on an English race day. It does feel like it's a lot of like England, England, England. And if I'm honest, I see Sweden and Denmark. So
untouchable.
For me, it would be fair if it was shared.
Yep.
I understand. For me, Poland should have a lot of priority because of what they do and how they do it. Okay. You know, in Britain, we are looking at Poland to copy what they do.
Really?
Of course.
So we set the example.
Of course, 100%.
See, Phil, that was my next question because obviously, speaking of the outside perspective, I remember myself watching when I was very little British Speedway with Coventry Bees, Poole Pirates. Obviously, you were a huge part of Elite League back then. When did that shift? When did that change happen according to you from literally the Elite League, the top league in the world, switching to Ekstraliga, having the most money and the most influence?
I think 20, 25 years ago, I think, is when Poland started to become...
Why is that?
Why
do you
think? Maybe. Hey, mistakes were made in Britain, I'm sure. You know, they had a lot of money from their TV contracts that was just spent on riders and not spent on infrastructure, buying stadiums. It's a very different product in the UK, you know. Every stadium is rented privately, pretty much. You know, no city help. So it is a very different product. You know, they have to be commercially viable by the people coming in through the gate. This is why they can't pay as much as in Poland. But yeah, it's maybe there was mistakes made by Britain that they say dropped the ball, as they say, and didn't carry on with where they should have been. And obviously Poland went in the right direction. And I would suggest they crossed over at some point, where Poland were on their way up and Britain was on its way down.
But British Speedway is bouncing back. I mean, in the last 2 seasons, we've seen a lot of top names moving back or starting their career in the UK. What would you say is the biggest challenge at the moment? Is it the money? Is it the calendar for riders who race both in Poland and in England? Or is it the stadiums that you mentioned? Because that's actually another...
I
go
would
ahead,
say
please.
That's the biggest one.
Yeah.
You know, you talk about stadiums, obviously, in the UK when it's privately owned, and like Wolverhampton decide, okay, we don't want Speedway no more. It's been there for 35 years, they've paid their money, and never a problem.
See, that's the thing that we can't understand here in Poland. With 6 out of 7 days of a week being spent on what were greyhound racing, right? And then the one night should be for Speedway, especially at
I don't even think it's greyhound racing. I think a lot of it is to do with if I was to break it down very simply, if you have a plot of land which has got a speedway track that's worth 2 million euros, with planning permission it's worth 20 million euros. As a business person, if I owned land,
I want to sell it for as much as I can.
Of course, I would want to sell it for 20 million. So it's a lot down to governments and councils to put things in place to stop this from happening. And yeah, we were very lucky with the Coventry thing, which is talked about by the Prime Minister in question time in the House of Commons. So yeah, we're trying our best to do that behind the scenes to help more, to stop this happening, to stop, you know, tracks being closed down. Because again, we've got some good stories, you know. Oxford have come back, Workington now, a new track that's coming back, there's potentially another one. So there are some positives as well, but we've got to try and keep the solid base and build on that rather than losing.
See, but I feel like there's a lot of pressure from the people, from fans, but in Poland there's also pressure from local governments, obviously coming from the fact that Speedway is so popular and local governments, well, kind of rely on the pressure from the fans. So would you say that Speedway is unrepresented in the UK?
Yes, I think
underrepresented.
We have a lot more. I guess in Poland it would be football and volleyball along with Speedway. I guess as the big three. Yeah. Of course, in Britain we've got rugby, cricket, you know, ice hockey. There's a lot more that going for that money, I guess. And yeah, perhaps we're not represented enough with the government to a higher level, and the local councils and cities maybe don't back Speedway as much. But we're trying our best to, and as you say, the last 2 years there has been a feel that things are going in the right direction. And it's good, I think, for riders. They realise that it's a different type of speedway. Yeah,
definitely.
It's a very different type of speedway. You know, I would say it's more technical and a bit
more challenging surfaces.
Skillful is the wrong word, so I don't mean to sound disrespectful, because obviously you have to be skillful to race a speedway bike. But the technical element of it is very different.
Well, I know you appreciate hardworking people, but there's a bunch of people who just took a picture while you need to work, so I know you need to go.
I'm not in that picture, I don't work for them, so... But
so,
yeah.
One last question in regards to British Speedway, but SGP as well. You know what type of impact Emila Sajfutdinowa had on the British Speedway. Are we ever going to see Emila Sajfutdinowa and Artioma Łaguty in the SGP?
Kończąc ten wątek, ten wstęp i opisanie funkcji Phila Morrisa jako CAO Premiership, warto wspomnieć, że na krótko po tym, jak został ogłoszony, do ligi dołączył Emil Sajfutdinowa. I nagięto regulamin, to znaczy dopisano, oczywiście to było legalne, natomiast zmieniono go względem lat poprzednich, ponieważ Emil Sajfutdinowa nie mógł startować na licencji ze Związku Rosyjskiego, no bo tam sam został zawieszony, cały związek został zawieszony przez FIM, a na mocy tej licencji, którą miał w Polsce, Emil Sajfutdinowa nie mógłby startować za granicą. I Brytyjczycy, oczywiście Chris Louis, szef Ipswich Riches, o to najbardziej zabiegał, żeby powiedzieć, słuchajcie, po co ta międzynarodowa licencja, skoro w Polsce może jeździć, niech nam pokaże polską licencję i my go dopuścimy do zawodów na mocy tej polskiej licencji. Phil Morris nie powiedział nie, co myślę, że w kontekście dalszej rozmowy jest ważne, bo oddaje już w jakiś formalny sposób jego podejście do startów, chociażby Emila Sajfutdinowa czy Artioma Łaguty na Wyspach pod jego jurysdykcją.
You know what type of impact Emila Sajfutdinowa had on the British Speedway. Are we ever going to see Emila Sajfutdinowa and Artioma Łaguty in the SGP?
Of course, this is not my decision.
Yeah.
This is George Vegas, the top guy at the FIM, that makes decisions at the moment. And at the moment, nothing has changed. Obviously, some other sports look at it differently. Tennis have had Russian players in it from day one. I say Russian pole, however you want to say it. But I think NHL hockey, I think they got 50 Russian players in that, and they carried on. So every sport looks at it a bit differently. I think FIM are led a little bit more by the IOC and sort of FIFA. They sort of sit in that boat. And it'd be interesting to see with Paris now, you know, some of the neutral athletes. Of course, both of them as athletes are very good. They were first and third in the world. And it's, I don't want to get into politics of it, you know, but it's not my decision. If they were allowed back, I'm sure they'd be welcomed with open arms, but they've got to be allowed back. That's the first goal of it.
I see, Phil. One last thing, I promise.
No
so part of the tradition of the series is that the last segment is just proverbs. I read one proverb to you. It's an English proverb. You say whether you agree or not, and then I ask a follow-up question.
Okay.
Right. So birds of feather flock together. Would you agree with that? You don't have to agree with every proverb. Not all of them carry the wisdom.
I guess birds flock together and you see them up in the sky. But
what about Speedway riders? Because I'm trying to find out whether Speedway riders go into clans or like friendships. Like, for example, when you need to explain a decision, do you talk with them as a whole, or is there a couple of gangs?
I think that you talk about flocking, that the riders coming back to Britain is good. And the talk and the chats and... You know, even it's quite funny when I did the media day for Warner Brothers in Paris. Some of the senior riders like Leon Madsen and maybe Bartos were talking about, oh, we've seen the media day in the UK. We did, so I was quite proud because that was something I helped with. And I guess flocking together is anything. You know, it's at the moment everyone flocks to Poland because there's very good money, there's lucrative contracts, there's sponsors, but hopefully a few flock to maybe the UK to do their job there, and they do flock together. And sometimes you talked about Emil being a very good influence, said very good positive things about Britain. I think that helps with other people seeing that a senior guy says that. So maybe.
You mentioned Bartosza Zmarzlika. I want to ask you about how is he perceived outside of Poland? Because we're very divided about Zmarzlik here in Poland. Some people say that he's the greatest of all time. It's a matter of time whether he beats Mauger and Rickardson. And then there's another group that says, well, I mean, he's good, but stop with Zmarzlik stuff. He's not really that great. What do you think of Bartosza Zmarzlik?
As a SGP race director, I have to be very impartial. But yes, I think he'll be the favourite for the World Championship, obviously for a reason. In Britain, I would guess he's high regard. He's very...
Even though he never really raced.
Of course, in Britain, I think, you know, he will get as big a cheer as anyone at Cardiff. I don't think there will be anyone that would be negative against him. You know, he's a very hard rider, which maybe doesn't get seen as much, you know. He's as strong as anybody else, even though he looks a bit smaller. He's quite ruthless and hard, but that's what he needs to be, I guess, to be a world champion, and he's proved it. And yeah, I think everybody knows they're chasing him in a sense, if I'm honest. So yeah.
I see. The next proverb: necessity is the mother of invention. Have you ever invented something on the spot, on the fly, at the venue because something else didn't work?
I'm inventing stuff every 5 minutes when something goes wrong, you know. I'm honest, you want to go look.
Is it part of your job description?
Yesterday, of course, there was that 5-6 minutes where I couldn't get a clear answer that the times weren't correct.
Okay.
So I had to make a decision there and then on the spot. If I couldn't get clear indication that them times were correct, we had to rerun that second minute.
Yep.
So again, I'm inventing something as I go because something had to be a decision. We're live on TV. So yeah, I guess invention-wise, I probably haven't made a real invention, you know, maybe something in my
But
garage.
you have improvised.
But yeah, improvisation is my job, I guess, you know. You're always doing something that, if everything goes perfect and everything goes right, then the job is too easy and everyone can do anyone's job. It's just any sport is the same, I think.
I'll agree to that. And last proverb: when there's a will, there's a way.
Oh, 100%.
100%?
Yeah.
So would you say that if there's enough people with the right will, they will make stuff happen? For example, in British Speedway, Polish Speedway, SGP?
100%. You know, for me, I love the sport. I've been in it since I was little. You know, I raced professionally for 20 years. Once it's in your blood, I think everybody that's in the stadium, that's a mechanic, that's a rider, it's a strange sport that once it's inside you, I don't think it leaves you. So it's, everybody's got that. Everybody loves Speedway, you know, and when something happens that's not very good, like someone gets injured, the whole world comes together. Doesn't matter whether you like that person or not. Even when my wife passed away a year and a half ago.
Sorry to hear.
You know, the world of Speedway that knew me suddenly was my friend, which is great for a little bit because I know I don't have sometimes friends, which is not, you're not here for friends, but it shows that the community of people will look out for it. And when a rider has I was very good friends with Lee Richardson. He was a good friend of mine, a teammate for many years. When that happened, you know, the world of Speedway particularly stand together, you know, with somebody and their family and everything. And it's really nice to see that rivalries are put aside. It doesn't matter if he does race for the team that you don't support. So yeah, I think it's definitely.
I mean, I'm sure you remember the Kevlars after Darcy crashed,
yes,
and the whole Speedway community went together in Tornia.
It's really quite an honour, the sport. I think it doesn't. Of course, it happens in lots of other sports, but I think the fans realise there's time and place to, you know, go at people. Also, there's time and place to step back and respect it. But I think it's an amazing sport, and I love the sport, and I'm absolutely honoured and privileged to be even sat here talking to you, honestly. Everything I do, sometimes I think, wow.
That is my privilege. One last question, Phil, because you mentioned a lot of names and a sense of community amongst riders. Do you ever clash with someone during the round? For example, if you don't agree with something or they don't like something, and then the next day they apologize or they go for a beer with you? Because even here in Warsaw, in 2015, I'm sure you spent plenty of your Friday night talking to Nicky Pedersen and Jason Dahl. Do they ever apologize to you?
Of course, normally after the event, it's because I've been there. I understand when it's the heat of the moment, and you're frustrated as a rider. I get it. Normally, there's always going to be a few battles. Let's say riders don't agree with something, and you know, a perfect example for me would have been Moorlilla, when we had real bad rain, and it was the one time I really sort of pushed a little bit, and they were a bit unhappy and they went. Everything was okay, and I'm going to say the name, Nicky Pedersen was first to complain. He was and then when he won the event, afterwards he's like, yeah, it wasn't as bad as I say, sorry about that. It's always, you know, but the guy that scores 1 or 2 points, it's been a disaster all night. That's natural in sport, you know. The guy that wins it is happy, the guy that's at the back is unhappy. But yeah, we deal with all the ups and downs. They happen in sport, and I try my best to respect the riders and understand that when they're not happy, they're going to be upset.
Yep.
But also, on the other hand, they normally, the day later, it's a respect thing, or in the evening, you know, even I remember back to Gorzov maybe 2 years ago, it was wet and I sent him out and Wolfenden was very, very tough and hard. As soon as the meeting finished, he's on the phone saying, I'm really sorry, I shouldn't have done that, I embarrassed myself. So I don't need that to go public, I don't need to put it in the press. I've said it now, but, but you know, fine. I mean, these are the things that happen.
Yeah, like you said, a heat of the moment, and I'm sure you understand it well as a former rider as well, that things that happen at the meeting could be perceived differently 5 or 10 minutes later.
Of course, yeah, it's different.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure, Phil, to talk to you. Best of luck for the rest of the season.
Thank you very much as well. Good luck to you as well.